Can you believe this weather? Ridiculous. I can't believe somebody's already all summer long. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this pandemic can go on another 2-3 years.
You know, I never was completely into social events anyhow.
Well, let's face it, not that many people like me that much.
Well,
so this has worked out pretty well for me.
I'd say that with the mask, a lot of people are glad as far as you're wearing a mask.
Well, I think I look like George Clooney, but it turns out
You do look like George Clooney.
I appreciate you saying that. My daughters say the only thing I have in common with George Clooney is that I have 2 arms and 2 legs, and my hair's gray, and that's about it.
Do you know they say the bank robbers now are having to label them robber?
That's crazy. I like that one. Yeah, I'm going to get one that says "Let my people go."
Have you got? Speaking of the pandemic, I was talking to somebody the other day. Lake Winnepesaukee is closed. Also,
It breaks my heart. It's so funny that you brought that up because I was just getting ready to leave the house, and my eldest daughter she's a real nostalgic kid. The other one is zero nostalgia. I mean, the other one is like zero sentiment. Mm-hmm. Like she could put the rest of us in dog cages and keep us there and be delighted and poke us from time to time. But the oldest one is real nostalgic. So I'm getting ready to leave the house, and she goes, "Do you remember when the Cannonball was the best roller coaster we'd ever ridden?" And I was like, "Yeah, I kind of miss those days too." You know, tell me about the first time you went to Lake Winnepesaukee.
I remember going as always. They used to have bands there, if I remember.
Oh, years and years ago.
It was the place to be, and you fed the fish, and you get one of those paddle boats.
Right.
And I remember feeding the ducks. They really didn't have anything there that much to do, but everybody took their lunch. Remember?
Yeah. For me, it was heaven. I used to dream about having a railroad track like they had there all over my grandfather's farm and riding it around. My cousin Lisa and I, one day we went out on one of those paddle boats. I must have been like 7. She must have been like 9. Sometimes I still think we're out there, you know. We're a 3-hour tour.
Yeah. Do you, would you say that was the event of the year when you went to Six Flags, or was it a casual thing?
I will be honest with you. I didn't go to Six Flags until I was in junior high school. So Lake Winnie was the big thing every summer for us. I was raised on a poultry farm by my grandparents, and off and on between here and Chicago afterwards. So every summer, that was the big thing to do, was to go to Lake Winnie for one day. Usually my Uncle Howard would take us, and we would take my grandmother or some other relative, and that was great.
And it wasn't 3 times a year, it was
one time a year. Yeah. What a lot of people don't realize who are watching you and I talk is that we grew up here, and we were both lived here when this was a town of, say, 15,000 people, you know, maybe 20. And we weren't always doing as well as we are now. I think that we're a lot more affluent than we ever thought we would be as a region of the country. I mean, there was a time in Cleveland when if you walked into a restaurant, you were either related to the people there, you went to school or a church with the people that were there, or you knew somebody that did.
Or you ran the restaurant.
Oh, that's
one
true.
of the 3.
One or the other, right? It's true. We did that.
Now, when you say poultry farms, you was raised by your grandparents?
Till I was 5 years old or so, yeah. And then 4 or 5. And it's a long, convoluted story. You know, you got to make so many important decisions between the ages of 14 and 24. And my mother tried to make as many good decisions as she could, but she made some bad ones too. And as a result, I had a many splendid experience with respect to my life and early upbringing.
You know, the decisions you make from 14 to 24 are extremely important, but I don't think people realize that it's not the end then.
No, it's not.
In other words, it's just important, but you can really change things after you're 24.
Well, that's the beauty of this country. I mean, really, there's a lot of redemption beyond 24. But if you give me somebody between 14 and 24, I tell this to my clients all the time. I tell my clients, especially juvenile clients, that those are the 10 most important years of your life. You sure can get a lot done between 14 and 24 to go in the right direction. And then any little setback can hurt you too. I mean, you get arrested for a serious crime between 14 and 24, you're going to have a problem. You have a pregnancy out of wedlock, you're going to have some problems between 14 and 24 because children have still acquired this habit. It's called eating. That means somebody's going to have to go to work. I think marriages between 14 and 24 are difficult too because I've seen it in my own personal life, my own family, siblings, cousins, mother, father, whatever. I do think there's a lot of possibility to turn things around after 24, but it's really difficult, particularly if you pick up some serious felony charge or a theft charge or something like that that really kind of puts you on the path to some sort of job you hate.
Only because people tend to not hire people that have had felonies.
Certainly. I mean, it's so difficult. Most of us don't know what we want to do by the time we're 24. It's really the rare person who wakes up on their 19th or 20th birthday and knows what they want to do. What I try to encourage everybody that I know, especially kids, is find the thing they love to do. Sort of like you. You love what you do, don't you?
Love building.
You love building things, don't you?
If they knew how much I loved it, I wouldn't be able to make a living at it.
Yeah, see, if I could count, I would love to have your job. But since I can't count, ask any one of my math teachers. They will verify this fact that I cannot count.
Well, you said Chicago. What do you mean? You'd gone to Chicago?
Well, my mother was a waitress, and I never knew my biological father.
Let me ask you this. Kanavos.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
That's a Greek name.
Greek. Are you Greek?
I'm adopted by my stepfather.
Who's Greek?
Who was Greek. My birth name was something different. My brother shares my birth name. And he's a good guy, and I don't have any problems with him, but my stepfather, I never knew my biological father. He's one of those people who, likewise, between 14 and 24, made some very bad decisions and spent a lot of his time incarcerated. And I never knew him, really. I didn't even meet him until I turned 18 and graduated high school. So my stepfather, who I subsequently met, took me under his wing, and he loved me like a son. He adopted me, and I'm proud to share his name and his heritage. And so are my daughters.
Is he in Cleveland?
He's deceased now. Oh, both my parents are deceased. Are both your parents still alive?
Yep.
Are they? That's a blessing.
Yeah.
I see your father all the time.
Yeah.
And he's a super good guy.
He's around town a lot.
Yeah, I see him. Just back before this COVID thing came up, I just about saw him every Saturday morning for breakfast over at Old Fort. Yeah.
But so you went to Chicago to live part-time?
I was one of those kids who was always into something. My poor grandparents were exhausted, couldn't put up with me, so my mother eventually hooked up with me, and I went to Chicago to live. That's my understanding of how things played out. So I grew up in spend my fall school year in Chicago with my parents, my stepfather and mother, and my other 3 siblings, my brother and 2 younger sisters. And then no matter what happened every summer, even if my other siblings didn't come down, I always came to Tennessee. A couple times my grandfather came to get me. We took the train back, which is really kind of cool now that I think about it. And then I was the first person in my family, out of all the generations of my family, to ever fly in an airplane. I was the first person to fly. I flew from Chicago to Chattanooga on an airplane. It's back when they used to dress you up like a...
Oh, yeah.
For the flight.
Well, you went to Truett.
I went to public school in Chicago until the 6th grade, and then I went to Valley View Elementary School.
Yeah.
And then I went back to Chicago for a year, and I came back, and I went to Truett 8th and 9th grade, and then I went to Bradley High School, and I graduated in 1981 from Bradley Central High School.
That's where you met Scott Franklin.
Frank Chance and I met at Truett Junior High School in the 8th grade, first day of school.
What class?
We met before class. His father was a janitor over at Mayfield, and my father was running a restaurant. So Franklin's father was getting off work and dropped off Franklin. My father was going to the restaurant early and dropped me off. And I got there and I didn't see anybody, and I was sitting at the bus stop, and Franklin said, "Hello," and I said, "Hello." And at that time it was the 70s, so everybody had long hair.
Yeah.
So Franklin's hair was a little long, my hair was a little longer, and I thought, well, this is going to be cool. Everybody's going to be like this.
Yeah.
They weren't.
Especially Truett.
Truett, yeah. Truett was I love Truett. I had a great experience there, and I love all my teachers there. And I wish I could have just shut my mouth and listened more when I was in school, because I would have learned a lot more from those people. There were some awfully good people.
When he said hello and you said hello, how would you know that 30 years later you and him would be in the same office together as lawyers?
Yeah, it's one of those things, you talk about knowing what you want to do. You see, what I really wanted to do was write for Rolling Stone magazine, okay, and travel the world, okay, as a rock journalist. But I stupidly listened to Franklin Chansey and became a lawyer because he said it was going to be fun. Guess what? It's not any fun.
Was he always wanting to be a lawyer?
Not always. He fell under the spell of his cousin, who was a lawyer here in Cleveland, Denny Mobbs. And I think Denny Mobbs sort of infected Franklin with the idea of becoming a lawyer. But Franklin was always going to do something law-related, I think. He was always very, I'll put it this way, I never even read a book till I met Franklin. I mean, I thought I was an athlete, and I thought I was a lot cooler than I ever was. I thought I was a better athlete than I was too. But Frank at least, would read a book. I hadn't even read any books until I met Franklin. But one thing leads to another, and your friends have a big influence on your life.
So you were friends with him all through high school?
Pretty much, pretty steady. I mean, you know how it is.
Sure.
Things wane and flow, and things grow.
Yeah.
We grew a lot closer towards the end of high school. We became much closer friends. Of course, I didn't have a car, so anybody who had a car was a pretty good and who could stand my company was ideal for me. But Frank had a big influence on my life, but I'd say the biggest influence is on getting me to where I am is probably my church youth group at Macedonia Baptist Church. Steve McCamus and his good wife were there, and they really took me under their wing and had a big influence on my life. And then my high school sweetheart and her family had a big influence on my life. And then I would say that getting into college and doing well, and then thank God for the United States Navy because
after high school, you say, I'm going to go to college?
No, I was going to join the Marine Corps. I was going to join the Marine Corps right out of...
And what was Franklin's path to?
Franklin was college bound at that point, but I hadn't really considered going to college at that point. Now, let's put it this way. I took the ACT 3 times, and I scored a 17 on that thing 3 times. Yeah. You tell me that test ain't accurate, there's a problem. Yeah. I didn't even know we had class rank at Bradley High School, but Miss Ellis, who used to, I don't know if you remember Miss Ellis.
I don't remember her.
At Bradley High School. She used to be the secretary. She gleefully, not gleefully, but I didn't even know we had class rank. So she said that I asked her what my class rank was, and she handed me a little card. She said, 444 out of 521. That means there are people in prison with better ACT scores and class ranks than me. Trust me, I know, because I have to deal with them on a regular basis. So I really wasn't college bound.
But I don't think ACT relates to your intelligence. You're obviously one of the most intelligent people I know, and I know a lot of people. So that can't, there's something wrong with that test. It may be accurate to a degree, but there's got to be something wrong with determining if somebody's smart.
Well, I'll just say that I'm not the smartest lawyer I know, and I wasn't the best student I know, but I am about the most determined person I've ever met. And there's a handful of people who are probably more determined than me. But I grew up in a restaurant family, and you're only as good as the last meal you've served. Mm-hmm. And there's always ways to improve on what you're doing, what the product is. And every table in a restaurant that you wait on, or even bus for that matter, offers you an opportunity to redo your job all over again. You know what I mean?
It's just quicker. With me in building, it's 8 months.
Yeah.
With you, it's
a
long time, maybe.
All I know is that there are a lot of lawyers who are smarter than me, but there are very few who will outwork me. I believe in hard work because, you grow up working in a restaurant, you know what hard work is.
Which restaurant?
Well, my father was a disaster as a restaurant guy. Ask any of his friends, and they'll tell you that he was the only Greek that they ever met who couldn't run a restaurant without filing bankruptcy.
They say if you see 2 Greeks talking on the road, they're getting ready to open up a restaurant.
I think you stole that joke from me.
I think I did.
I think you
We
did.
got it from Monos, maybe.
And maybe you did.
But which one was it in Cleveland?
My father had a series of disasters. He had one out on South Lee Highway with one of my mother's relatives. I think it was Holiday Hill. That worked for a while. Then we moved over to the little restaurant on Spring Place Road, the Country Boy. And this is where I learned at a very early age that if you have a wife and you love her, don't work with her.
Yeah.
Because no sooner than we were starting to make a success out of the place, their marriage started falling apart. And myself and my siblings sort of had the fallout from that. But it used to be right there on Spring Place Road. It was a great place. But again, my father was not cut out to run a restaurant. He was cut out to work in a restaurant.
Yeah. So when did you, so you decided to go to, instead of going to the college, you went to the Navy?
I was going to join the Marine Corps. And my high school sweetheart was on her way to Vanderbilt. And she and I sat down at McDonald's, and I was trying to convince her that I was going to join the Marine Corps. And she said that it was all fine and great, but I wouldn't be dating her anymore if I joined the Marine Corps, and that I'd better get myself in college. So that's what I started doing. So I got into Southern Illinois University on academic probation.
Why Illinois?
Because it was about the only place that would take me.
Oh.
I mean, I'd never even seen the place before, but I managed to get a small journalism scholarship there, and it changed my life for the better. I mean, I got this little 5x5 index card, flipped it over, and they said, Southern Illinois University, where your future is, and they checked a box on there, so there was a $2,100 scholarship waiting for me.
Now, why that college?
Because there was a journalism competition at the University of Tennessee the previous year, and I'd participated in it, and I'd managed to have a huge success.
What was it on?
Well, it's really a stroke of evil genius on my part. It's a combination of just what laziness will get you. You may not recall this, but in 1980-81, they were getting ready to put the World's Fair in Knoxville.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay? So they had this huge journalism competition up there every year for a while. I don't know if it still goes on or not, but it was going on then. And Clark Chisholm, who was a teacher at Bradley, big influence on my life. I was the managing editor of the Bradley High School newspaper, The Trumpeter. He made it possible for me and this other kid to go up there and participate in this competition. So as I went up there, I didn't know what I was going to do because, frankly, I was a little out of sorts. I mean, never been on a large university campus, and it was kind of weird. Anyway, they had all these different competitions, like best feature article, best such and such. Best interview was one of the categories. So I hadn't done anything all week while I was up there except to kind of chase some girls around and not do very much.
Yeah.
Clark Chisholm came up toward the end of the week and sat down with me, told me how disappointed he was in me. And you know, it's one thing for somebody to be angry with you. It's another thing for somebody who's invested in you, even a little bit, to tell you they're disappointed in you. Mm-hmm. So Clark told me he's disappointed in me, so I really kind of felt bad. So the next morning I got up early and I went downstairs, and there sitting across from me at the table was Bart Conner. Do you know who Bart Conner is? Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know who Bart Conner is now, but what we can recall is that in December of 1980, the Olympic Games were going on in Russia. And Bart Conner, who was sitting across from me, was supposed to be at the Olympic Games. In fact, he was probably one of the top contenders for a gold medal that year. But instead of being at the Olympic Games because of the Russians invading Afghanistan, the United States boycotted the Moscow Olympics. So there was Bart Conner, who should have been at the games that summer, sitting across from me because he was participating in a gymnastic camp at the University of Tennessee. So I looked at him, and I recognized him because I grew up in Chicago, and he's a big Chicago kid. And I looked at him, and I said, "Do you know who you are?" And he goes, "Yes." I said, "You're Bart Conner." He goes, "I know I am." And I said, "How you feeling?" He goes, "Well, not so good." So I said, "Look, I'm in this journalism competition. Can I interview you?" And he goes, "Sure." So I grabbed a handful of napkins and a pen. I started asking him some questions. Before I knew it, I had a pretty good interview. A friend of mine typed it all up, submitted it. I never thought twice about it. Turns out everybody else was doing stories on the World's Fair, talking to the mayor about the World's Fair, the groundskeepers for the World's Fair. I had this one interview that was completely not related to the World's Fair. And it was poignant, and it was sad. And unfortunately, I don't have a copy of it, but it was just beautiful. I
what are the odds?
What are the odds? It's like I always tell people. Yeah.
Even if you hadn't been to Chicago, you wouldn't have known that he was even.
He'd just been another blonde-haired guy.
Yeah.
Gymnast, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Opened a lot of doors for me. So I got this notice from Southern Illinois University. I'd never been there before. And I threw out my thumb and hitchhiked to Carbondale, Illinois. And that's how I got to Southern Illinois University. And it changed my life.
But where does the Navy fit in?
I did 4 years at Southern Illinois University, and then I went to law school. And I was supposed to go to attend law school with Franklin Chansey. But he got a scholarship to the University of Cincinnati, so we went to Cincinnati. So I went to UT. And I learned pretty quickly I wanted to be a lot of things, but not necessarily a lawyer. So after my first year in law school, I was looking for, I did pretty well, fortunately. And I was, because I'm super competitive by nature anyway. So I went by and saw my Navy recruiter, and I said, "You guys take lawyers?" And they said, "Yeah, we do." Joined the Navy JAG Corps. 30 minutes later, I was a commissioned officer in the United States Navy.
Did you go through boot camp?
I went through knives and fork school, not exactly like boot camp, so it was no officer and a gentleman experience.
Yeah.
Okay? But it was, you had to learn how to speak Navy, talk Navy, walk Navy, and dress Navy.
Not push-ups and all that stuff.
Come on, look at these arms. Do I look like
yeah.
I couldn't do a push-up with an Al-Qaeda terrorist making me.
But I've heard this story about how you rode a bicycle from Chicago to Cleveland.
Yes, once. From Chicago to here. But I've ridden it from Carbondale, Illinois to here, I think, twice. Very painful.
Now, why in the world would you do that?
You're young, you don't have a car. I was in great shape then, not like now. I look like I ate the old me now. I had a sort of a devil-may-care approach to my youth. I enjoyed it very much. And it was I tell you what, riding a bicycle is a lot harder than hitchhiking. Hitchhiking is a lot easier. I was a great hitchhiker. For instance, I would have signs that were pretty gimmicky, like Nashville, Mom's waiting. People go, pull right over and pick you right up. Or, Chattanooga, great conversationalist.
Yeah.
And you get picked up by the same 2 or 3 groups of people. A lot of preachers would pick me up. And depending on how I felt about it, okay? Mm-hmm. If I wanted to have an ongoing argument for about 2 hours, or if I wanted to just simply take it easy, the first question a preacher will ask you after nice day such and such is, have you accepted Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior?
Yeah.
And, if you really wanted to have some fun with him, you'd say no, and then you'd debate it for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then you'd hug them at the end, and it'd be all right. But almost always easier to say yes, which I have, by the way. Yeah. Accepted Jesus as my personal Lord and Savior.
But did you ride from Chicago when you were going to school there?
Yeah. It was,
or Illinois?
Yeah.
So you were 4 years in Illinois at a college?
At Southern Illinois University.
With a $2,100 scholarship?
Well, that first year. Just for that first year. After that, I bought student loans, and I worked at the student library. I worked at both the undergraduate library and then the law school library.
Because you didn't come from money, obviously.
No, I did not come from money.
So going to college was a real leap of faith with the $2,100 scholarship.
But needless to say, it was. But it was a lot more fun, okay, than I ever thought it would turn out to be. It's one of those things. Fear is, and you know what I'm talking about. Fear has such a great hold on our lives, because we're consumed by fear so often. We stay on the porch too much. I just thank God that I had 1 or 2 friends of mine who weren't afraid and encouraged me not to be afraid. And I'll be honest, Frank Chansey wrote my acceptance letter to college. He helped me fill out the application. Probably wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have gotten the thing in the mail. And it's that kind of thing that, builds a lasting friendship for someone. The sort of acorns of love that make a difference in someone's life. Because nobody in my family, my parents, God loved them. They were the sort of people who used to say, you need to go to college, you need to go to college. But they had no idea what it took to go to college. No money was set aside for college. It was just a difficult thing.
Just an idea. It wasn't even an in-practice thing.
Yeah, they just knew what they wanted, something better for their children, but they didn't know how to express it, And they probably, like me, were initially cowered by fear. You know, none of my siblings went to college, and as far as I know, I had a couple aunts who went to nursing school, but I'm the first person in my family to ever graduate from an undergraduate school, and I'm probably the first person in my family to ever graduate from a law school or graduate school or any type of school like that.
And I'd add another level of that. Not only have you become a lawyer, but you have become an extremely big name in Cleveland.
I don't know about that.
People know your name and can't even spell it.
Yeah, see, that's a good thing and it's a bad thing, because you know, notoriety is an okay thing, and don't get me wrong, I do like making money. All right, I'm really more interested in doing a really good job. You know what I'm saying?
I think that comes with it.
I think it does too.
I think that's the byproduct.
I think that all those. I think the notoriety and the. I mean, there are a lot of people who, you know, they think I'm a shallow person. You know, that I lack depth. But I'm really only interested in doing a good job in the moment that I'm in. It just goes back to being a restaurant person. Each table is an opportunity, all right, to wait on a couple of customers and gauge where you are with that particular table. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to close the file and know that I did a good job, or that my staff did a good job, that we treated these people that we represent like human beings, and that we played within the rules that the system provides us. I like to win cases. Of course, I'd love to hear the words case dismissed, but I understand that it can't always be the circumstance, that sometimes you're going to lose. And when you are going to lose, I want to make the process as less draconian as possible for my clients. It's a strange thing. I really hate being a lawyer because I love people so much, okay? And it's so difficult to love people so much and see the stupid mistakes that they make on a day-to-day basis. I used to have brown hair, and now it's shocking white because of all the things you see people do, not only to others, but to themselves. The worst part of my practice was domestic relations law when I had to do that here. Okay, and I haven't done a domestic relations case.
What is that, divorce?
Divorce work and custody work. What you tend to get with those cases, you tend to get the very best people on their very worst behavior. You'll get a husband and wife that have been close friends, courted, married, had a couple of children. Now they've hit a patch of success or a patch of ruination, and now they're getting a divorce, and they'll fight over every little thing in the worst way. And it's really taxing. The people who do that kind of work, my heart cries out for them. Give me criminal defense any day of the week, because with criminal defense, what you get are people who have been accused of something bad, and they're usually on their very best behavior when it comes time for me to deal with them, because they know I'm trying to help them.
So you're saying a divorce case that's bad, they actually have the power to end it.
Sure.
Whereas with a criminal defense case, they don't have the power to end it. So that's what makes it.
I just think that the domestic cases are a lot more antagonistic, okay? Most of the prosecutors I know and deal with are pretty good people. Some of them are not, okay? But most of them are pretty good. Some of them lack empathy. Some of the prosecutors I deal with lack grace. But most of them, by and large, are real, genuine human beings who understand that most of these people that we deal with in a criminal setting, they're not our enemies, they're our neighbors who probably use poor judgment in a given instance. But in a domestic relations case, what you get are two people who are supposed to have loved each other once upon a time, and now they're going to fight over a Little Mermaid tape.
Yeah.
I've had that case.
Or an aquarium tape.
Or anything, you know. So,
They're gonna pay a lot of legal fees just to get that aquarium that doesn't even work now.
Or make their lawyer's life miserable, you know. The worst time to be, and there's going to be a domestic relations lawyer or two watch this and they know I'm going to be right. The worst time to be a domestic relations lawyer is on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, because that's when the phone starts blowing up. He won't let me have the kids. She won't let me have the kids. He's messing with my time. She's messing with my time. You know, we're talking about a couple of children that previously probably been ignored by the parties, okay? You know, now every battle is over what they want to do for those 12 or 13 hours during Thanksgiving.
And they could have just tried to deal with it beforehand.
I always tell my clients when I was handling divorce cases, if you want to watch your children grow up, stay married to your spouse.
Even if you don't like them.
Well, it's a, you know, when you grow up in a Greek family, you understand that happiness is not necessarily part of the equation of life.
Well, I'm Italian, and we argue with there's an art to it.
That's right.
I mean, it's just, I mean, I was watching Andy Griffith the other night, and he had stopped this domestic. They were arguing, and then after they got them calm, everybody was depressed, and he finally told Barney, he said, Barney, I believe that them arguing is part of the peace.
It may
You know, that was the peace, that it was a normal thing.
Yeah. You know, my whole philosophy about life is this. Life is short. It's often joyless, and the portals to death are many. You know? Well, I know it sounds terrible, but what I like to do first thing in the morning is grab that Chattanooga Times Free Press, crack it open, go straight to the region and look at the obituary page. Because we're only here for a short little while, and we got to make the best of it as we can. You know, we've got to try to love each other as much as we can. We got to try to be as civil as we can to one another as much as we can. I mean, otherwise, what are we here for? Are we here to live in shame and fear all the time? Everyone makes mistakes. I personally have said so many asinine things over the course of my life. I wish I could take them all back. I wish I had an opportunity to take everything I've ever said that offended somebody back and have learned from it. But the fact of the matter is that once you say something or do something, you can't take it back. It's got to be how you really feel to your core, you know, the amount of love that's within you that gives you the ability to get up the next day and reinvent yourself. Because if you don't have that ability, you're hurting.
Why do you, we know now why you focus on criminal justice. Does that get you up in the morning? Is that the law? You know, that wasn't necessarily the law you started out to do, was it?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. When you don't know what you want to do when you go to law school, and this is why I should have never become a lawyer, all right? Because I had no sense of mission when I went to law school, all right? It's like we were talking about earlier. I wish I could have ascertained at a much earlier age what my passion, what my real passion is. See, really, as a lawyer, I'm really nothing more than a salesman. And the product that I'm trying to sell most of the time, unfortunately, is me, okay? In order to sell me, I also got to back it with solid results for my clients, okay? And that's not where you want to be all the time. I'm not the product I really wanted to sell. I have this friend of mine, he's a lawyer, and he's a great lawyer too. His name's Ken Miller. And when I was a boy, Ken Miller was my idol. Not because of any other reason, not that I wanted to be a lawyer, but because he lived near Brown Stove Works when I was a kid growing up. And I used to work at Brown Stove Works for a couple of summers, 4 or 5 summers. And Ken Miller lived over there. And Ken Miller was like a rock star with all the guys over at Brown Stove Works. And he and I talked one day. I said, Ken, what would you really rather be doing? He goes, Scott, I'd really much rather be selling skyscrapers in New York. I'm going to tell you, if anybody in Cleveland could have sold skyscrapers in New York, it was Kenneth Miller, because he's just a super affable guy. Everybody loves him, you know? I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to law school, so I got to law school, and turns out I hated it. That's why I joined the Navy. Before I left law school, though, I had a chance encounter with a great lawyer here in Tennessee. He's deceased now. His name was Bob Ritchie. And Bob Ritchie told me that I was doing exactly the right thing, that what I ought to do is go join the Navy and treat Navy like graduate school with a paycheck and learn how to try cases. And it changed my whole law school experience for me because I knew I wanted to become a trial lawyer at that point. I was still a young man. I was still able to learn the rules of evidence and criminal procedure. And really, I think most lawyers are judged by how well they try a case. And I think over the course of my 33-year-long career, I've been able to try some pretty good cases and get some great wins. I've had some losses too, but it's called the practice of law, not the exact science.
Like medicine.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
But you seem to now have an extreme passion for being a criminal lawyer. That's where you have landed.
I have an extreme passion for, I do, not so much for criminal law. But what I want to do really is, if somebody can come in and hire me, and let's face it, the average fee that I charge is, like $1,500 or $2,000 to handle some small problem for someone. Sometimes they're bigger because the problem is bigger.
You've handled 2 or 3 for me, and we've won every one of them.
Well, that's what I want to hear. Another satisfied
Yeah.
customer. But what I want to do is I want that person to know that they're getting every bang for their dollar that they can get. Because that's, when you take it all together, that's not a lot of money for the lawyer, okay? Mm-hmm. But it is a lot of money to that person. I mean, if you're working over here at President's Bakery, or if you're working over here at Brown Stoveworks, and you pay some smart aleck like me $2,000, you're going to expect to get some kind of result. You're at least going to want your lawyer to treat you in a humane way. Now, a lot of people think I'm a jerk, okay, because I talk truth to my clients. I want my clients to understand that they are responsible for putting them in this position. And I'm always disappointed whenever I see somebody who I've previously represented before in more trouble, because it breaks my heart to see them making the same mistakes over and over, Some people just can't help it. Most of that's either drug or alcohol related, typically.
And so it's their fault, but it's not their nature.
I think that it's well established, and I know you won't get any sympathetic ears from a lot of judges, maybe some judges, but not very many prosecutors, that when somebody has a substance abuse problem, it's up to them to get help for it. Currently, Tennessee's at the bottom of the list towards getting treatment and helping people who have these problems. We're a poor state, and that figures, Still, I'm going to the funeral home, or could be going to the funeral home, I'm not now during the COVID thing, 3 or 4 times a month, as these young, very young men and women out of this generation in their late 20s and 30s are still eating up with this opioid epidemic. It's killing them in droves. And I don't know what the answer is, but I know that incarceration hasn't worked. I mean, we couldn't keep our jails full enough for a while as a result of this. Now with this coronavirus, they've tried to keep the jails as empty as they can, and the last thing they want is to have somebody in there with a lot of substance abuse problems. I don't know what the answers are, but I know that the war on drugs has been lost by our country, in my view. I think that we need to look at legalizing some of these drugs and to get them off the plate so we can keep these people in the era of good citizenship. At my core, I'm not really a Democrat or a Republican. I'm mostly libertarian. I believe that, you're going to make your choices and I'm going to make my choices. And I really don't need the government to tell me what choices are good for me and what choices are bad for me. I think that these people who had all gotten addicted to these opioid drugs had another alternative, legal alternative that they could have gone to, then maybe we wouldn't be in this crisis that we're in now.
And we may be keeping a lot of people that could do a lot of benefit to the world, but we got them incarcerated because they got caught with marijuana, I guess, that's now legal or going to be legal.
Well, I think we every day we grow closer and closer to treating marijuana like a benign drug. But the downside with a marijuana conviction, especially for a young person, particularly for a young black or brown person, is it's really not a gateway drug to more addiction. A lot of people like to call them gateway drugs to more drugs, but really they are a gateway drug. They're a gateway drug to poverty. You see, what happens is that people already use marijuana convictions. Let's go back to the 14 to 24 that we're talking about. You pick up a drug conviction between 14 and 24, in this country now, you're not going to get scholarship money. You won't be able to join the Navy. You won't be able to join the Marine Corps.
Insurance is probably higher.
You won't be able to get a government job. You won't be able to get student loans. You see, the difficulty for me was when I was in the Navy, I was prosecuting young men and women for doing exactly what was going on in the dorm rooms at Southern Illinois University.
Yeah.
And one group at least made a commitment to serving their country. Admittedly, they broke their oath by breaking the law by consuming marijuana. But the temptation to consume marijuana was just so powerful. So now what ends up happening to so many of these young people is that they end up getting stigmatized for the rest of their life, And it makes it very hard for that person to come back from that.
To me, that should be prejudice. If you're caught not hiring somebody or not due to a conviction, I guess what I'm saying is I've got a guy that works with me. He's been to jail for, I don't even know what it is. I just know he's a great guy. I
Yep.
trust him with anything. But he's been to jail. He can't get a job. Once a week, he's got to go pay the parole officer money. And where's he at? Oh, he had to go pay his parole officer.
Yeah.
So he just drives over there, pays him, has to take half a day, drives back. And on Saturdays, he's got to go to this community service thing. He can't work then.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what this guy did, but I promise you it was not bad.
Yeah. Well, again, we can't solve all the problems during this discussion, but I will say that it's just a shame. I grew up surrounded by these people who casually used all these drugs, and some of them who even sold some of these drugs. Mm-hmm. Now here we are. It's 2020. All right. A good number of states have legalized marijuana, and I think that it ought to be legalized nationally and not criminalized anymore.
Yeah.
Police officers and police departments are resistant to this because one of the uses of the smell of marijuana is that it gives them probable cause to search the average citizen when they're out on the street driving their car. Mm-hmm. You have a reasonable expectation of privacy in your house. That's great. You have a reasonable expectation of privacy in your person, which is great. But the law is set up in such a way that you don't have much of a reasonable expectation of privacy in your car. So when that window comes down and a police officer says he smells marijuana,
he just says, "I think I smell it."
That's right. That's right. Now, this has all been sort of confused under the era of the CBD,
yeah.
CBD, but it's still probably sufficient probable cause to search, particularly if the officer says at the side of the car, "I think I smell marijuana." Is that what I smell is marijuana? And the citizen doesn't know better and says, "Yeah, that's marijuana." Then it's going to be on like Donkey Kong. They're going to be searching the car. And you know, in active policing, I understand they have another dynamic too. In active policing, they want to keep the people out of our neighborhoods, all right, and off our streets that are smoking marijuana. Because where do you got to go to get marijuana? You got to go to a drug dealer.
Yeah.
What's a drug dealer?
Yeah.
He's a criminal in the eyes of the law. Okay. Anybody who associates with that purchases marijuana is possessing marijuana. Possessing marijuana is a crime. I won't get all bogged down talking about marijuana, but I do go to Bonnaroo every year just for fun.
I don't think marijuana should be criminalized. I know I know a lot of people that smoke it, and they just smoke it like you would cigarettes or like you would take an aspirin, or I don't know when they, you know, it's just I can't see putting that person in jail or stigmatizing their name over something that's
I absolutely agree with you.
so minor.
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's long overdue that we've changed that.
And it's getting there now, right?
Well, it seems to be, but who knows? You never know. There's, the country's divided right now. I mean, look how divided the country is. Mm-hmm. It's amazing to me, and I don't want to get bogged down in a discussion about politics at all, but it's amazing to me that in a country that prides itself on the right, of individual liberty, mm-hmm. that this is even an issue. Again, if there was a mound of heroin in here, I wouldn't touch it mm-hmm. because I know heroin is death. Yeah. Okay, if there was a mound of marijuana in here, I probably wouldn't touch it either because I don't like to smoke marijuana because mm-hmm. it messes with my throat and voice. Now, there was a pound of psilocybin mushrooms in here, mm-hmm. I'd be a little more tempted. Okay, because again, I think it's a very benign drug, and I think that it has a proven track record, of helping people. Mm-hmm. I heard a story this morning on National Public Radio. It was just this morning, National Public Radio, talking about the positive effects of psilocybin in depression. And people who take psilocybin, and the reason it's criminalized is a whole different debate, but people who take psilocybin are a lot more relaxed, they deal with depression a lot better, etc. I think it's something that needs exploration and ought to be explored. But again, I think in a free country, all right, we ought to have the choice to do whatever we like, so long as we're not harming somebody else by our decisions, or children especially.
And that's the way everybody wants it.
Well, it's what they say until it comes time to make these decisions.
I think it's maybe more monetary. If you took if you took arresting people for marijuana or some of these drugs that are just their choice to take, which, we all take drugs, take aspirin, ibuprofen. That's a form of a drug.
Well, let's talk about this. We both grew up here. Remember the dog fights they had every couple of years when they wanted to have liquor by the drink here?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the ads that ran in the newspaper? I can vividly remember one of the best ads I ever saw was a crashed car with an arm sticking out the door, obviously dead, blood running down it, right? And a pool of blood and a bottle of alcohol at the bottom of it. And now look at how much better a place Cleveland, Tennessee is with liquor by the drink. I mean, you can't go into a restaurant when you could go into a restaurant without running into somebody you knew from church.
Yeah.
All right. You would, now you can have a decent meal here. Prior to liquor by the drink, the best Italian restaurant, and it's still pretty good, was Fazoli's.
Yeah.
Okay. The best seafood place, it's still okay, was Captain D's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Long John Silver's.
Right. But see, what I can't stand and what I totally resent about this whole liquor by the drink debate was, I can't stand for a handful of adults telling me that they know better than me.
Yeah.
At 18, I was a full-grown man. At 25, I was a full-grown man. Finally, at 35, I was a mature adult. Now, have I had the normal social faux pas you have when you have had too much to drink? Yes.
Well, sure.
Okay. But am I glad that I can have a steak dinner and have a cold beer at the same time at a nice place? I am. And there's a lot of other people who feel that way too. And these other things that we've been talking about, it may not be this generation, but eventually some generation will legalize marijuana.
I think it'll be within 5 years. I think it'll be legalized everywhere.
I hope so.
And of course, you can't drive intoxicated, just like with alcohol. That's a whole nother.
That's a whole nother thing. It's a whole nother thing.
We're talking about being caught with it and spending time in prison and marking your name.
You can again, here we go. I can have a couple cocktails at dinner and a glass of wine at dinner and drive home safely. Mm-hmm. All right. Surely, I can use, if I wanted to use marijuana, I could use it responsibly.
Yeah.
I mean, not because it's simply in my system am I committing a crime. I don't even know how they can properly gauge where you are when you're under the active influence of marijuana or not.
Yeah.
All that science. Again, I can't count, so I can't do science.
Well, it's certainly a problem. And maybe that's why you ended up in criminal defense, that to right these wrongs.
Well, I'll tell you the only job I ever thought, government job, and everybody who knows me knows this is true. The only job I ever really wanted here was to be a public job, would have been district attorney general. It's a great job. I would love to be district attorney.
What is a district attorney general?
The district attorney general is the chief law enforcement officer for the district. Okay? He is the man or woman who ultimately decides which cases are prosecuted and which cases are not.
For the district?
For the district. That includes Bradley County, Polk County, Monroe County, McMinn County.
And to the layman, which I am, who is ours?
Steve Crump.
Steve Crump.
And
I know him.
He's an awfully good guy. But I'm so beyond, this conversation that we just had about heroin and psilocybin and marijuana, it's just a sort of conversation that somebody would use against me, even though I feel that way, to prevent me from becoming district attorney general. That plus, my life probably hasn't been what it should be on a lot of other levels. Some of these asinine things I've said and done over the years come back and bitten me. All right, but that doesn't mean I don't love what I do. I'm just telling you, out of all the government jobs I could have ever had, I wouldn't want to be a judge to be a judge. Okay, I'd much rather be a criminal defense lawyer or district attorney general. The reason why I really want to be district attorney general is because you sure can bring a lot of justice to people. You know what I'm saying? You can affect a lot of justice for people.
Where you're at now, you can only argue that they get justice.
That's exactly right.
By being a district attorney, you could actually give
the
justice.
The most powerful person in any dynamic, all right? More powerful than a judge, more powerful than the bailiff, more powerful than the police officers, more powerful than any witness, is the assistant district attorney general that I'm dealing with at a particular moment in time.
if this was a Franz Kafka, remember that did you ever read the book, The Trial?
Yeah.
Boy, it was a great book,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite quotes is a Kafka quote. Ready?
Yeah.
If you look at an accused man in any light, he's almost always attractive.
Well, that was a great book, The Trial.
It
I
really
didn't
was.
read any of his others.
Yeah.
But did he die before he? See, I think he died before he finished the book, and the ghostwriter finished it.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I find myself thinking the way he thinks.
Yeah.
They say that Kafkaisms. There's a word for it.
Yeah. That is a Kafkaism.
Like the football team gets in the huddle, and you think they're talking about you.
Yeah. Very Kafka-esque.
Kafka-esque.
Yeah.
But if this was a Franz Kafka book in The Trial, then they would say everybody was in charge. But you're saying the true guy in charge is the district attorney.
Oh, absolutely. Just let me say this, okay? I think Stephen Crump's been a good district attorney general.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be a good district attorney general in the future. I do think that the district attorney general's office, okay, and Steve and I have been friends for years.
Yeah, I really like him.
Yeah, he and I have been friends for years, and he's always known that, when he got elected, okay, I shook his hand and I said, "You got the job I always wanted."
Yeah.
But you understand, I'm so far beyond the pale now, I don't think I could ever, I can't imagine a world where my daughter wants to be district attorney general, and she's going to law school now, and I said, well, I can't even imagine a world where they would let some old broken down criminal defense lawyer come and even sit on her sofa, and hang out with her when she gets to be district attorney general, if that ever comes to be. You know what I'm saying? It's like they always talk about us. They said that the criminal defense side's the dark side. There's actually a bumper sticker that we have. It's like, come to the dark side. We have cookies. Get it?
Yeah.
Tough crowd. I'll be here all week.
But the district, you're like on the opposite end. In other words, the district attorney is trying to convict of a crime.
Yeah, it's an adversarial
and you're
system.
trying to argue that your person didn't do it.
No, I think most of the time, here's where we are, okay? Both of us sort of have a good understanding of what the facts are. What we're trying to do in each instance is reach a consensus of what justice is for the particular conduct of this person on that day. You understand?
Now, is that all wrote down somewhere, or
No.
is it ambiguous?
You feel it in your soul most of the time. Most of the time, you feel it in your soul. All right?
Because if it was right or wrong, good or bad, you could just take it, put the facts in, push a button, and it spit out the answer.
That's exactly right. It's so funny that you brought up Kurt Vonnegut's one of my favorite writers. And one of my favorite books is a book called Player Piano. And you need to read that book. Player Piano. It's excellent. It's a short read, but it's all about where we are now. Written sometime in the 40s or 50s, Vonnegut predicted that we'd eventually be where we are now, where robots take over most of the manufacturing jobs, and that eventually every job is made obsolete, okay, by robots and computers. In fact, lawyers naturally were one of the last groups to hang on.
Yeah.
But eventually they got them, because the way they got them is just what you're talking about. They type in a series of facts. A series of facts are typed into a computer. A button is pressed, and the outcome is determined. What ought to be justice? It takes the entire the bit of what I was talking about earlier. It's, you know it in your soul what justice ought to be. And again, most of the prosecutors I deal with are really compassionate, empathetic people who are firm, but they're fair. You know, some aren't so much, but que sera. You know, it's called the practice of law, not the exact science. I used to be a pretty smug little assistant DA a long time ago, and I understand what it takes. It's a process. Life's a process, not an event.
But if you could just put it in and punch the numbers, and it spit out, okay, that would really eliminate even your job.
It surely would.
But so the reason they don't do that is all ambiguous. I guess you'd have to say, well, this is not put in the facts. Then you'd have a lawyer say, well, that's not the facts.
Well, certainly they would argue about what facts would be inputted.
Yeah.
You know, but
you can blur the line.
I can see a world where it comes down to that. I can also see a world where we start wearing clothes like they do in Star Trek.
Yeah.
You ever watch Star Trek?
Yeah, everybody ends up with the same clothes.
I think that'd be great, actually. I'm sick to death of wearing a necktie and a shirt to court and a suit, because now I don't fit into most of my clothes. I look like Mama Cass Elliott, except I'm missing.
At my church, I'll count the people wearing a tie, and it'll be 5.
Well, you used to.
And out of 300.
Used to, you can go to church in short pants. Remember when you could go to church in short pants?
I remember when you had to dress up.
Yeah, it's an abomination. My grandmother used to convince me I was going to go to hell if I ever walked into a church in short pants. Now I see people in church all the time in short pants.
Now, what evolved?
We got richer as a society, and we got more laid back. See, used to, we had 3 television stations. We had 3, 9, and 12, and one of them didn't come in that good.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
Remember that? You had to stand out in the rain.
Yeah, in 61 you could get if it was just right, but there wasn't nothing on it anyway.
Then we all got cable, okay, and air conditioning, right? And then once you got HBO,
it was over.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, once you got HBO and all those other channels, I mean, all that started to die away. We became too affluent as a society. So we even brought a casual approach to church, you know? Like,
Are we gaining now that it's casual?
You tell me.
I mean, I remember stories of people saying they used to go on old movies. I always watched Leave It to Beaver. I mean, they dressed up to come down to dinner.
Yeah, I remember.
We watch TV and we eat in front of the TV.
Yeah.
I mean, if we was to sit down together as a family and eat, why, there's no telling what would happen.
Well, I have to sit down at dinner to eat. Otherwise, I can't argue for the 20 or 30 minutes a day that I need to argue in order to keep my skills sharp.
You mean you argue, you eat at the dinner table?
We try to eat at the dinner table as much as possible, but it's just a free-for-all. I'm amazed that at our house there hasn't been a knife fight at dinner. Okay? It's amazing.
You mean, now I know you work kind of late, right?
I've been trying to get home every day about 6 o'clock or so.
7?
Yeah, sometimes. But I'm not eating out that much anymore, you know, because it's so difficult. It's weird to go into a restaurant.
You were never an eat-out guy anyway. I've noticed something about you. You're not an eat-out. You never were an eat-out guy.
You don't know me that well. I love to eat out.
I never see you eating out.
Well, we just don't eat at the same places. You're always at Ruth Chris's. I don't go there that
Well,
much.
I see you. I've seen
I
you.
had your money.
I've seen you at Gardner's.
Yeah, I'd go there once in a blue moon, sure.
So where do you eat?
Usually Cafe Roma, Bistro. I like those 2 places the best. You know, I'm a gin guy. I like gin.
But so every day at lunch you go out to eat?
No. Mostly during lunch I'm having sardines or tuna fish.
That's what I'm talking about. At
I don't
lunch,
eat lunch. I'm not a big lunch guy. I like breakfast. If I hadn't realized at a much earlier stage in life that breakfast really is the most important meal of the day, I'd be governor of the state.
So you eat
now.
every morning?
I do now. I didn't used to. I'd walk around with headaches and miserable all day long, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And finally, I realized I wasn't eating breakfast in the morning.
So what do you eat?
For breakfast?
Yeah.
Pretty standard fare. Usually 2 eggs, some English muffins, nothing right on.
You cook them?
Are you kidding? Have we met? No. I have a wife. We have a division of labor.
She fixes breakfast every morning?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, but yes, she does. Okay? We just had a very interesting family discussion about that just today. So, as far as
I'm always interested in what people do.
Yeah.
You know, I never eat breakfast. I never eat breakfast. I'll stop at the coffee shop, but I never eat breakfast.
Wow.
And I never get headaches.
What time do you finally eat food over the course of the day?
I eat probably, I eat at 12. I go to lunch every day.
Yeah.
Every day. But I don't eat any breakfast.
Yeah. See, in 12 noon for people involved in law enforcement officers, lawyers, assistant DAs, judges, noon to 1:30 is the sacred hour and a half. We typically don't call each other during that time period. We don't text each other too much during that time period because that's really, especially police officers, they want to be left the heck alone during that time period of the day because everybody's on them constantly. You know.
I remember one time years ago. Remember John Edgar Brown III?
Oh yeah.
He was drawing it up a deed for me, and I thought I had to have it immediately. Mm-hmm. And so I finally found him at Diamond Leo's.
Yes.
And I come running in there, and I said, John, I need to get you to fill out this to get that deed ready. He said, Dee, I ate lunch between 12 and 1. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, but John, I need to have this thing because I thought it was an emergency. Yeah. He said, Son, I'm telling you, I ate lunch between 12 and 1.
It's sacred. I'm telling you it is.
So I just went ahead and ordered. I ate with him. So
Yep.
didn't bring it up to 12 and 1.
He was a marvel. He and Winston Prince. That's really what's, the practice of law has changed so much since I first started. I've been practicing law for 33 years, and when I came to Cleveland, okay, and started going to those bar meetings, man, there were some titans, real titans of the law then. You had Conrad Fennell.
Joe Good?
Joe Good was still around, kicking.
Yeah.
All the property guys. You had Good, you had Humbird.
Harlan Painter.
Then, of course, you had just so many. Jim Logan has always been just a titan of the Bradley County Bar Association. Mm-hmm. You have, now there's 2 or 3 others. But when I first came here, it was a big deal, all right? Now, what's happened over a steady time, that the practice of law has become less of a profession, seemingly, and more of a vocation, Used to, we were always trying to be social with each other. All right,
now, explain that deeper. That's very interesting. I don't want to pass over that.
Sure.
Explain that.
It's just changed.
Much like getting on the airplane.
Yeah. And wearing a suit, little Scott wearing a suit on his first flight, to now I show up with a pair of flip-flops, and because I don't want to hate going through the security system.
Yeah, just
sweat
kick them off. Yeah.
Right. Ridiculous. The practice of law has changed.
So back when you came back, it was, now to me, John Edgar Brown.
He was old school.
Looking back, he was looking at the time, he was like a rogue.
He was a rebel.
I mean, he was a rebel. He'd carry his what do you call it, a pipe in his back pocket, and the bowl part would hang out.
Yeah.
And they wore the cowboy boots.
Yeah, John Edgar Brown has forgotten more law than I'll ever know.
And he had the eyebrows that
crazy eyebrows.
Yeah, he said his eyebrows were
he was a real ladies' man, too.
He said, he really was.
He really was.
Yeah,
he was a heartbreaker.
He said he told me his eyebrows were lethal weapons.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite out of that whole crew was Winston Prince. Did you know him?
I didn't know him.
He was more funny. He gave me my all-time favorite quote, which is, "I'd rather have a $25 witness than a truth any day of the week." You can't make that up.
And it's terrible. It's terrible that is actually true.
Well, what I would say is that he said it in jest, but Diamond Lills used to be the focal point in Cleveland.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where all the lawyers would go.
Yeah.
And it would really be kind of weird because, some of those guys really hated each other's guts. Mm-hmm. But they'd still sit there for that hour, an hour and a half or so, eat a cheeseburger, have peanut chew in mouth.
Yeah.
And be civil during that little bit period of time. You sure could learn a lot about the practice of law from those guys.
But John Brown, he looked like a rogue. He did. But looking back, he still looks more professional than they do today. So that's how much it's changed.
Yeah, I don't.
Today So when you say they were more dressed up and
they were better lawyers by far. I'm going to tell you, I just think that the lawyers that were practicing the law when I first came back to Cleveland were much better lawyers than I'll ever be. I'm just thankful that I was within their midst long enough, okay, to get some idea of what really.
If you could bring them back to this era,
right?
Would they act the same?
Well, I think that two or three of them would be a lot more laid back. I mean,
they'd have to succumb to the current times.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. It's like any other. What if we brought George Washington back? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But when it comes to knowing the law and knowing how to research a case and argue a case, I just think those guys are much more squared away than even my generation.
But what I'm saying is, we always say we try to learn from the past, mm-hmm. and we know how these people operate, and we try to operate the way they do. We've learned from their mistakes in their occupation and how they do now, but we don't take from their lifestyle and bring it forward. We only take the easy part. In other words, if they were dressing up with a tie, did that make them actually a better lawyer, as you say, then?
I think,
Or is the lax lifestyle become? I mean, they sit down for dinner.
yeah, here's what I think. Based on what I know about most of those guys is they played as hard as they worked. They were hard workers and they were hard livers, you know? And they were, but they had something that most lawyers today don't have, and that is an encyclopedic knowledge of the law. You see, most lawyers have gotten lazy now because they have computers. I never read the law hardly. And I'll be honest with you, I very rarely ever read it because I know where to find it. If I have a question, I can type it into a computer in 2 seconds. It'll spit out whatever cases I need. On the other hand, those lawyers had to work harder to retain the law. Think about this, all right? For me to do a pleading now to simply write out any document, let's take your deed with John, okay?
Yeah.
All right? For me to do that deed is nothing, all right? Probably I already have that deed somewhere or can get it. All I have to do is download it, screen it in, make all the changes that need to be made to it, all right? Print it off and give it to you and charge you a fee. John or John's secretary had to, originally when they first started, they had to type it up on paper. Then they had carbon paper, all right? And most of those guys were typing that stuff up on manual typewriters themselves when they started their practices on paper with carbon paper. When you got to do that much intense labor on something, all right, you don't want to make any mistakes. So you want to know what the law is in any given moment before you render a legal opinion.
So then you go to those books that they all have on the shelves.
Yeah, you go into these young lawyers' offices now. You don't see any books on shelves. I've given all my law books away. I've given them all to stampers. If you want to go find one of my law books, you go over to Stamper's store and look on one of their shelves, and there'll be one of my law books there. I mean, the young lawyers have
Would he sell you one?
Huh?
He'd probably sell it.
Oh, I don't know what he'd do. He's a good-looking man, though, that Joe
Yeah.
Stamper. I give him grief all the time. He's a fun guy.
So you're saying, now if you took the time to go look it up and research it,
Right.
you couldn't compete today. You'd be all the time studying.
Well, that was a big drain on it. And that's why lawyers now, let me tell you something. This cell phone that I have,
Yeah.
if Conrad Fennell had had this cell phone when he started practicing law in 1960, the name of this county would be Fennell County. That's how successful a lawyer Conrad Fennell was. He's a great lawyer, you know, but he came up at a time when they were still carving their pleadings in stone, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, think about how much more productive Conrad Fennell could have been with an iPhone.
So the old lawyers were better, not because of their lifestyle, their dress, and their sense of professionalism, but because they had to actually research it.
Well, I think there was a combination of many factors. You know, I mean, there are a lot of things I think that made them overall a better package. I mean, you take somebody like Harlan Painter. Now, I never really messed with Harlan Painter that much. But when I was in Harlan Painter's presence, I respected him because I knew he'd been to the wars.
He had that air about him.
He had been, you know, he had earned it the hard way. You know
Him and Ronald Reagan were the only two people that could wear brown suits.
Not touching that one. Not touching that. You're not gonna
But
get
he was. You're right. You know, when you were around Harlan Painter, it was a reverence.
Sure. That's how it was with a lot of those guys, too. I mean, you know, there were a handful of lawyers my generation who segue between both groups and do it well. And I think like Robert Thompson's one of those guys. Robert Thompson's always been as gracious to me. He was gracious to me in law school.
Yeah.
He's been gracious to me in my adult life, and I'm thankful for that friendship. You know, now you've got this whole other generation of younger lawyers that are coming up now, and you know they're really closed off to themselves. They might communicate within their own pack, you know, of friends, but they don't really reach out to the older lawyers that much.
But now you're not an older lawyer.
Well, I'm 57. I mean, I'm not saying that hell yawns before me, but there are some who do.
No, you're not an old lawyer till you're 70. In my mind.
If I'm still doing it this at 70,
Yeah.
I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked. I did talk to a colleague of mine who I'm stunned, he's 10 years older than me, so I've been tracking my career with his, and I thought he was about as eager to get out of law as I was, but he told me this past week he thinks he's going to do it till 70. What do you think about retirement as a concept? Will you ever retire?
you know, most people I know that retire die.
That's what I know too.
So I think when the Bible says God told Adam he'd have to work the rest of the days of his life, I think that meant that if you retire, you're going to die. I think our punishment is to work.
Yeah.
So will I quit building? You know, just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
Mm-hmm.
So I just keep getting good jobs and good people. I just work generally for people that I've worked for before, and they just keep wanting stuff, and it's.
Well, that's good because I'll just tell you, you know, you're a perfect example of what makes Cleveland work. You see, we could live anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, but what makes Cleveland work is that, and you and I have talked about this before. You know, I look out at Cleveland and I try to fit in here, but let's face it, I'm Rocky Road. You know, you're kind of Rocky Road or Orange Sherbet. I'm not sure, but you're not exactly vanilla.
I'm very colorful.
Yeah, and it's difficult, but see. Cleveland proves to you this much, that if you got some moxie, if you're willing to work, and if you understand that life is a relationship business, then you can succeed in Cleveland. You've succeeded in Cleveland because your relationships have been so good with people. You know, I've succeeded in Cleveland because my relationships, I think, have been largely good with people.
You have a reputation.
Tell me about it.
You're two things. Number one, that you always call people back.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, that you really, genuinely care about your client.
I think that's true. Number one, I think a lawyer who won't return a phone call is a fool. All right? The single most important thing a lawyer can do is return the gift of a phone call. Now, there's some people that wear you out with phone calls, but you can marginalize that, okay? But, you know, it's like a lead on property. You know that movie Glengarry, Glen Ross?
Yeah.
Coffee is for closers. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that a lead, okay, if somebody calls you, especially if they call you late at night, you know?
What's late?
Well, I feel
8?
I feel phone calls from 2 a.m. before. Now, I don't do it a lot because I've gotten old, right? But my phone's hooked up and all my calls come in sounding like an air raid siren. Yeah. It's almost like, whoops. Okay, sometimes I have to remember that that's my cell phone.
Yeah.
Okay, but somebody calls you late. I think you have they need somebody then. All right, when you're in a desperate situation, when you are up against it, you need somebody who's going to make you calm immediately.
You are almost a therapist.
There's a degree of that.
We talk about this, and we talk about the lawyers that are better before and more professional. But the reality is, when somebody comes to you with an issue, it's about that much less than coming to you saying, "I think I've got cancer."
Well,
I mean,
I don't think it's that dramatic, but it can be. Let me tell you something. I've had clients commit suicide over the years. I've had some terrible experiences with it too, and I don't want to go into it too much because I don't want to sit here and cry. But when I had a client kill himself once, and it was terrible for me because his father came in the next day and wanted to know what I had said to his son that upset him so badly. And he did something, and I won't tell you what it was on the camera, but he did something that stayed with me, and it'll stay with me always. When somebody comes to you and they're in a desperate situation, I mean, I've been arrested before, so I know that I wore my poor lawyer out, okay? Calling him every day, trying to find out what
when a client calls you and says, "I just got to talk to him,"
yeah, I try to field every call I can.
Are you going back to that guy that you just said was caught wearing your lawyer out, and you know how they feel?
Well, I do know how they feel, and I do know how my lawyer felt now too. Okay, and my lawyer will probably end up watching this thing. So, thank you, Jimmy Logan, wherever you are. Okay, you know, I was a young assistant DA, got arrested, lost a great job. I was humiliated.
And go back to this. You were a young DA, worked for the DA.
Worked for Jerry Estes. I was in Jerry's office. I still love Jerry to this day. But I knew the moment I got arrested, even though right or wrong, that my job...
You mind telling me what it was arrested for?
I was arrested. I've been arrested 3 times in my life, and each time I've been arrested for the same things. Public drunk, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. I don't care who knows it. It's a matter of public
So
record.
you're a bad person to arrest.
Well, it turns out that if you ask a police officer, why are you arresting me? In some instances, that can be resisting arrest. Okay, I kid with my law enforcement friends. I say,
So if I get pulled over by the police and they say, okay, you've been doing this, we're going to arrest you, and I say, why am I being arrested? That is resisting arrest?
no, but on the other hand, when they're trying to handcuff you and you're like, why are you arresting me? That can be resisting arrest. I was a young, arrogant man, okay? I was working in the DA's office, and I was just a cocksure guy. But I will say that getting arrested was the best thing that ever happened to me. I know that people at the time would say that to me, and I'd be like, how could that be?
I think I remember that being in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Now that you remember.
I got arrested by some guy in East Ridge who was an off-duty officer working for the Marriott Hotel. Anyway, I hired Logan, and he and I worked through it together as a team, and it was good. But I will tell you that people were telling me at the time it was the best thing ever happened to me, and I was miserable with that because, you know, when you're in the Navy, I got arrested in the Navy in New Orleans, no problem. Okay, when you're in the Navy, you have like a duty to get arrested at least one time, all right? When I was in college, I got arrested in college. I think if you're in college, you have a duty to get arrested at least one time in college, all right? But when you're an assistant DA in your own hometown, you don't have a duty to get arrested there. But I knew, knowing Jerry Estes the way I knew him, that my job there was done. I was going to have to do something, all right? So I had a choice between leaving town, okay?
No, go back to this. Where are you at when you get arrested?
I'm at the Marriott Hotel in East Ridge, Tennessee,
East Ridge.
with Franklin Chansey, my best friend.
Is that where Oliver's was?
I can't remember. I know there was some little deal there.
Yeah.
Anyway, and Prince Miller was there too. All right. And if you ever get arrested, Prince Miller, if you ever have a police citizen encounter, you want Prince Miller within 1,000 miles because I'm convinced if he wasn't there, I probably wouldn't have got arrested. I think when he called the officer a brown shirt, it sort of went downhill from there. Yeah, you forgot your audio.
I always do that.
Anyway, but I tell you what, I had a choice between leaving town, all right, or digging in and staying. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Who was that guy who used to work for Alan Jones? Hugh?
Go back to this. You're not going to get out of that easy. You got arrested for what?
Public, drunk, disorderly conduct, resisting.
Go into more detail.
Well, here's exactly. See, I don't want to share the story with you because my wife hates it with a burning passion.
Okay.
I'll share it with you privately. But I'd be glad to share it with you any other time.
But you got arrested.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah. And which proves that anybody can be arrested.
Yeah.
Anybody in America.
Yeah.
But my charges were later dismissed.
Yeah.
And I sued the hotel and got a settlement from the hotel. I didn't get a settlement from the officers, but que sera. Live and learn, die, and forget it all. But by then, I already hung up my shingle and went to work.
As a
Private lawyer.
Because you were no longer on the path to be a
No, getting arrested pretty much. I mean, George Bush the second got arrested at 41 for DUI and cocaine possession, and his lawyers managed to frame that as a youthful.
How old was he?
He was 41.
Golly.
They call that a youthful transgression. Okay, I was 32, but when you're an assistant DA, you can't get arrested, I think, and become district attorney general. I mean, it would take a miracle, especially.
So the fact of the matter is, that's one reason you do criminal? I
could have done anything else I wanted to do, but I found the thing that I liked best, and I ran off and did it better. Tried to do it as good as anyone, and that's what happened. I made up my mind about 10 or 15 years ago that I was going to work as hard as I could to be the best at what I do. And really, prior to that, I'd gone about it all wrong. You know, I made so many terrible mistakes because it's the practice of law, not the exact science. You spend a lot of energy doing a bunch of crap you don't want to do. And then one day you finally realize this is what you ought to be doing.
Which is what? Define it. Put it in a shoebox.
Focusing on criminal defense cases. See, I don't go to federal court. All right, there are a lot of criminal defense lawyers who think if you don't go to federal court, you're not much of a criminal defense lawyer.
So local criminal defense lawyer.
I want to represent the people I love.
Bradley County.
Bradley County, Polk County, McMinn County, Monroe County, sometimes in Meigs. I hate going to Ray County with a burning passion. It's too far to go, and it's you always feel like you're getting homeschooled over there a little bit. But I do go over there, and we go to Hamilton County some.
Criminal defense.
That's all I do. It's like, who wants to go to a restaurant that serves Italian, Greek, Chinese, Mexican food? I only want to serve the one dish, and I want to serve it beautifully. That's all I want to do. I want to serve one dish beautifully.
I met a realtor one time, and I had this motel, and I was going to sell it. And so I met this guy in Chattanooga. He sold motels. Mm-hmm. That's all he sold. And I asked him one time. There was a guy asked me. He did a really good job. And
Sure.
said, well, he sell my gas station. So I asked him. I said, hey, Bob, will you sell his gas station? He said, no. And I said, why not? He said, all I do is sell motels. That was all he did.
There is something.
I mean, there was no amount of money that would make him do anything other than sell motels.
Yeah. Well, I'll just be honest. My life's motto is, for the tenacious, no road is impassable. All right, it's actually a Latin phrase. And it's sort of become my life's motto. When I was in the Navy, I used to tell my subordinates, I was a superior officer, I'd say, if you're enthusiastic about your work, you really don't have that much to fear from life. And it's so true. If you're willing to work hard at this particular thing, you can do well. But you have to be willing to work hard at it. You have to be willing to work steady. Now, fortunately, what I've done is I've grown older. I've managed to hire a couple of young lawyers who work for me, and they do great work. I've had 2 or 3 other lawyers that work for me over the years. Paul Moyle worked for me for a while. He's back with the DA's office now, but he did excellent work for me while he worked for me. Andrew Freiberg worked for me for a while. Mm-hmm. He did excellent work for me. Now he's a judge. I have 2 excellent lawyers now. A kid out of Hamilton County. His name is John Wysung. He's the eldest of 15. Can you imagine? His family's well connected down there, but he's a hard-working, hard-charging young lawyer. And I've hired this excellent lawyer who's a colleague and friend of mine out of Knoxville. Her name's Paula Henderson. 12 years with the Knox County DA's office. She's been doing the criminal defense circuit for a long time, and she's a great lawyer.
Is your whole office criminal defense?
My side is. I mean, we have a division of labor. Franklin handles civil cases, and I do all criminal on my side. I only do criminal on my side. That's all we do. It's worked out.
Not much interaction. He does that, and you do this.
Not much interaction, except bumping into each other in the hallway occasionally. I mean, he's busy working on his cases, and I'm inundated with work on my side. And I'm always looking for talent. So anybody watching this who thinks they might want to come to work as a lawyer for me, I'm always interested in talking with you.
So if somebody comes and hires you, are they hiring one of those other people that are working for you?
Well, they're hiring me because we're all in it together. I love going to court still, and I like the.
Do the other people that do criminal law on your side go to court?
Oh yeah.
So how do you determine who's going to go?
We divide it up by region. Paula lives north of here, up in Philadelphia, Tennessee. John lives in Hamilton County. Bradley County docket's heavy, so John's doing most of the
But what if somebody from Hamilton County comes to hire you?
Same thing, they'll send John down there, or I'll go down there. It's not a problem.
What if they say, we want Scott Kanavos?
Well, then I'll show up in a blue suit. But, if they trust me enough to hire me, they ought to trust my judgment enough to assign a young lawyer at least to do part of the work. And that's how I see it. I mean, it's a law firm. It's just not one person. I mean, eventually, Conrad Fennell is dead, all right? And Conrad Fennell was probably the greatest criminal defense lawyer, not only of his generation, but probably 2 generations. But you walk down the streets of Cleveland now, and Conrad Fennell doesn't have anybody pushing his legacy forward. Mm-hmm. One day, Jim Logan will die, all right? One day, Scott Kanavos will be dead. Who's going to push forward, okay, the excellent work that those lawyers have done? I know Jim Logan doesn't want all of his hard work to die on the vine. I don't want my practice to die on the vine either. You started your own business, so you know how it is. Mm-hmm. When I left the DA's office after my arrest, I had $64 in the bank. In fact, the very night of my arrest, I had paid off my student loan debt, $29,000 in 24 months. Not bad for a guy making assistant DA pay. So the morning I woke up and made bond and got out of jail, I had a total of $64 in the bank. I opened my law practice with what little bit of money I had on my state retirement account, $1,121, and the $64 that I had. I went over to Thurman's used furniture and bought a desk from Mr. Thurman, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
Bought me a mahogany desk that I still love. And
You still have that desk?
Oh, I do. It's my lucky desk. And
Now, how old are you at this point?
I'm 32.
I mean, so you're 32.
Mm-hmm.
You had the world by the ass, and you let it go.
Well, that's a very interesting thing. You've told me this, and I share it with my daughters all the time. Okay, having the world by the short hairs in Cleveland, Tennessee. There are people who drive right down the interstate here, and they drive by Cleveland, Tennessee, and they see there's a sign that says Cleveland, Tennessee, and they go, "I wonder who lives there."
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was a Cleveland, Tennessee. Martha, did you know there's a Cleveland, Tennessee? Well, I wonder how many people who live there. I wonder. It takes a village to raise a child, all right? To a certain extent, I'm that child, all right? And I'll just say that I wish I could take some of the things I've said and done back, but I can't. What can I do? I can get up tomorrow, and I can take a shower, and I can go to work.
But isn't that what made you? All those things?
Well, maybe.
I mean, think about it.
Who knows, though? I mean, who knows what makes anyone? It's Alan Murphy loves to tell me this deal about he stole it from a movie, I'm sure. But once upon a time, there was a child born in a village, and everybody goes, "That's a great thing." And the wise men of the village says, "We shall see." And then one day, the little boy fell down and broke his leg, and everybody said, "Well, that's a terrible thing." And the wise men said, "We shall see." Then later on, the boy got a horse, and everybody goes, "That's a great thing." And the wise men of the village said, "We shall see." I mean, who knows? This is why they don't make postage stamps after living people. You understand? Because you never know when something else will come up and embarrass them. You know what I mean? They only make postage stamps after dead people. Did you know that?
I've never known them to make a postage stamp for a living person.
It's because it's against the rules. They shouldn't name highways. I mean, look what we're doing now. We're taking down highways and statues because tastes change, politics change, and I don't want to get into that discussion.
Yeah. It's too complicated.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
One. Yeah.
But the sequence of events has to. I'm convinced that had you not have written that essay or journal, that you might not be sitting here today.
If it wasn't for the love of half a dozen really good people, I mean, where would any of us be? You know what I'm saying?
You probably couldn't name 6. Probably more like 5. That's how powerful those 6 are.
Yeah. There's a cast of people who have really helped me out over the course of my life, and I'm grateful to every one of them. You know what I mean? I just wish I'd paid more attention in school. I was one of those smart asses in school that just simply couldn't be taught. You know what I mean? I thought I was smarter than my teachers, and God knows I wasn't, right? I'd love to, you know what my greatest dream would be to wake up on a spring day in 1978, all right, just before I moved into high school, and resolve to learn something from my teachers when I was in school, instead of acting like I knew everything. In fact, I knew nothing, and I acted like I knew everything. I was such a fool. I wish I had all of that time back.
But let's take that same theory.
Yeah?
We're 55-ish. Will we say the same thing in 20 years about today?
You're a very optimistic man. I tell you what, I do make a better effort now than I ever have about trying to live in every moment. I tell my daughters all the time, be kind, be cool, and be in the moment. I think that's excellent advice for anyone. When I was younger, I enjoyed being young, but I didn't have any idea that I was building the person I was going to be. Who was it who said, the child is the father of the man? Mm-hmm. That's so true, really. The little boys that we are.
Well, that's powerful.
It is powerful. Lily Frank Fitzgerald. You can make you learn a quote.
Yeah.
The child is the father of the man. It's so true. I think it's either John Donne or Longfellow. Can't remember which.
I've never heard of that.
The child you were has made the man that you are today.
So it's our fault.
No, it's not your fault. It's your blessing. Think about it. That's not all negative. All right. You've done a lot of good with your life. You're a good man, husband, father.
I'm doing okay as far as I.
Yeah. I mean, none of us really know until we stand for the judgment. On how well we've done.
I walked down to your basement one time.
Mm-hmm.
I took a ride,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a picture on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and it was of James Dean.
Frank Sinatra.
It wasn't James Dean?
I think it was Sinatra.
No.
Yeah.
I think there was 3 pictures.
Okay.
James Dean,
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra, and
Mhm.
Elvis Presley. Maybe.
Yeah. I'm a big icon guy.
But it was black and white.
Yeah.
What picture was that?
I think you're thinking of the Sinatra booking photograph, where he's standing there.
Yeah.
And he's got the booking thing.
Why is that? I mean, it was in
You know what he got arrested for?
It was in a very prominent position. It wasn't like it was over here against the wall.
You're an Italian American, right?
Yeah.
Well, the Italians stole every bit of the Greek culture that they could. We Greek Americans, we love Sinatra. You kidding me?
Sinatra.
Yeah. You know what he got arrested for? Do you know what that little card says?
We're talking about the picture that was in the prominent place in your basement.
You can Google it. It's his booking photograph. You know what he got arrested for?
What?
Seduction. If anybody should have gotten arrested for seduction, it's him.
Was that a real
Absolute
picture?
booking photograph.
That's what he got arrested for?
Seduction. Yeah, he seduced an underage at that time.
Oh.
Not underage, but younger. It'd be like I guess solicitation of a minor, I guess. But all charges were dropped. It was clear.
But why that picture?
I don't know. It looks cool. I'm a Sopranos guy. I was always in the Sopranos. Speaking of James Dean, though,
I saw that picture in your basement before The Sopranos came on.
Probably, yeah. Yep. Speaking of James Dean, though, I love James Dean. I've been to James Dean's grave. I have a brick from James Dean's high school. They tore it down about 7 months before I got there.
Why is he so iconic?
Well, you're 24 years old. He's a good-looking kid. Killed in a car crash. In fact, the death date comes up now very soon, September 30th, 1955. I mean, he was always sort of an outlier for cool people. I remember the first Happy Days episode. Fonzie said, "Nobody understands school except for me and James Dean."
That's right. He mentioned James Dean a couple of times.
Yeah. And James Dean was 24 when he's killed. Think about that.
That's something to be. We're talking about him today, and he only lived to be 24.
Because to show you how I'm a Turner Classic Movie guy. My wife and children hate it, but I have it on at the office. I'll have it on at home. It's a very comforting thing. I love to turn on an old movie and watch an old movie. You know that Dean was only alive to see one of the movies that he was in released. The other 2 were released posthumously.
Anytime I've been in your office, you have had a movie playing.
That's right. Usually.
Why is that?
Well, because let's face it. Do you enjoy watching the news?
I don't like watching the news.
Yeah. Here it's Fox.
Yeah.
CNN.
Yeah.
All right?
One or the other.
One or the other, and you know that when you just get so tired.
They
of it.
can't be as bad as Hannity's saying. They can't be as bad as Don Lemon says.
Exactly right. So, and it's no fun. I miss when we had 3 stations. I miss when we had. My father was a Cronkite guy.
Yeah.
And we couldn't do anything till Cronkite said, well,
6 o'clock, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's the way it is. 6:30.
Yeah.
East 5:30 Central, right? But not until Cronkite said it was okay to eat dinner did we eat dinner. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how regimented it was. Then we got all these other stations. We thought it was going to be a good thing when we got all these stations. Instead, all they do is bicker their own way.
Yeah.
They go off in their own tribes. Give me Turner Classic Movies every day of the week. I won't even stay in a hotel that doesn't have it. I mean, I'll call in advance.
So you're talking about the old movies?
The old movies, yeah.
Black and white or just old?
I don't care, so long as they're on that station because they're commercial free.
But when you're sitting there watching, because I've been in there, and you'll be in there watching the movie, I have the sense that you're really not watching that movie. You're mulling something else over in your head, and there's something about that being on that.
If I could have a fireplace that would bring as much comfort to me as those old movies, that's what I would have. But there's something about having an old movie on that you've seen. I've probably seen Casablanca probably 300 times. All right, I've seen it on the big screen probably 3 times. My all-time favorite line in any movie is in Casablanca. You ready? So they're sitting there. Rick's character's talking to Louis, the police guy. They're outside. It's very early in the movie. And Louis says, "What brought you to Casablanca?" And he goes, "I came to Casablanca because of the waters." And Bogart says that without missing a beat. And Louis says, "But Casablanca's in the middle of the desert." And Bogart responds, "I was misinformed." It's a great line. It's a great line. My second favorite line is Scarlett O'Hara when she
What does it mean he was misinformed?
because he's in the desert. He came to Casablanca because there's no water in Casablanca.
In other words, there's nothing more to the story other than I was misinformed.
He's a cynical guy making a joke.
But I have the sense that you're really not watching the shows.
I'm really not. What's
going through your head?
Well, it helped me relax as I return all those phone calls you've been talking about. I mean, you know, you get 60 phone calls a day or 100 phone calls a day. You've got to return those phone calls.
What about text?
I love text. It's the best thing ever happened to me because you can get a text at all hours, all right, any time of the day, and then you can respond to it over the course of the day.
Do you get 60 texts a day?
I probably do better than that.
Do you go home at night and say, okay, who haven't I sent?
I try to do that as much as I can, but let's face it, it's, you know, it's all just a management thing. You know, it's you got to manage people's expectations. You know, you've got to manage their expectations about their cases. You've got to have a handle on where you hope to end up. You know, and where you expect a positive result for them. You know what I'm saying? It's difficult. It's difficult because there's so much involved. There's so many dynamics involved. You know what I'm saying?
Is the fact of guilt or innocent not even a factor in this stuff?
Not for me. Really not for me. I never ask my clients if they're guilty or innocent. No good criminal defense lawyer should, because it's an adversarial system. We got to begin with the premise that our clients are innocent, and we got to fight from there. Because if you go around picking and choosing how much energy you're going to put into something, you shouldn't be doing this job. You got to bring as much energy to every situation as possible.
And you could never know if they're guilty or not. I mean, if they're lying.
There's a powerful thing. I mean, you see video evidence of somebody behaving terribly. You got to tell them you behaved terribly, okay? And then you got to manage the consequences from that. If somebody confesses to doing something that's terrible, then you've got to manage the consequences of that confession. I mean, again, I'm not in the business of just getting people out of the trouble that they're in, okay? I'm in the business of helping them manage the situation that they're in. And with the help and guidance of an intelligent, okay, compassionate, justice-seeking assistant DA, between the two of us, we usually get it right, I think.
Get it right, too, as far as whether the person's guilty and the true...
What is the necessary punishment to correct that person's conduct?
Yeah.
Because, again, these people aren't our enemies, and we can't eat them.
No.
All right? We're not going to go genocide everybody in the jail.
Yeah.
We can't lock them up forever. We don't have the resources to do that. At some point, somebody's going to say, this is what I think this negative conduct is worth from a punishment standpoint. If you disagree, you haggle, and that's what judges are for. Because perhaps you'll end up with a judge who got a sense of what's proportionate and fair.
Because there's not a set thing.
Not until we get that computer that we're just punching in on that you were talking about earlier.
And that's when you come into play.
Well, hopefully I come in before we do the computer portion of that show.
But you come into play to getting people either proven innocent or mitigating their punishment.
Exactly right.
To a reasonable or less punishment.
That's what I do try. That's what I strive for.
And as far as what happens to them after, as far as in society, none of us can control that.
Well, you can only, we have there are a lot of safeguards in the law to protect young people from their conduct. We have an excellent judicial and diversion statute here, and I don't want to get all bogged down in that, but there are lots of opportunities to turn yourself around still, even though you pick up a conviction. But really, so much of it does turn on the individual and what they want to do with their life subsequent to having their problem.
It's very unfortunate. I'm sure that going home of the evening, wouldn't you have 100 cases that are pending, or
Here's what I always say, Dee, I want all my clients to get religion, just not at the same damn time, okay? Because if they all did, I'd be out of a job. You know, people are going to make mistakes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's got to be somebody there to help them along if they do. You know, I've been sitting in a lawyer's office, waiting anxiously for that lawyer to come help me. And every day when people show up in my office, waiting for me to help them, I want to help them to the ability that I can.
Not that you genuinely do want to help them.
I really do, because I want to tell you, life is short, and what I really hate to see is somebody poison months of their life worrying about this kind of thing. See,
To go back to that, what you hate to see is what?
Somebody poisoning hours and days and months of their lives with something. See, when somebody's accused of something, let's say they haven't done it, or let's say they have done it. It doesn't matter which.
Yeah.
Okay. We've all said and done things that, boy, if we could just take back, okay? If we could have just not said this, if we had had one beer less, if we had
Got a 30 more minutes sleep.
and we cooled our heads and warmed our hearts instead of getting furious with somebody. We just, I never met anybody, honestly, who said, I'm glad I did what I did and I do it again. I mean, I rarely see that. Okay, you'll get the occasional drug dealer who might feel that way, but they're very few and far. Okay, you know what I'm saying? And people who get accused of things, all right, or get arrested for things, they wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and they worried about it, or they drive in their car and they go, oh, they worried about it. Okay, they need somebody who's going to stand up there with them and say, well, look, I'm not excusing what you've done, but I am saying that this is manageable. Because at the end of the day, they can't eat us. They can try to, but they can't.
And whatever it is they've done might not even be illegal anymore.
Well, who knows about that? But over the course of all of human experience, everybody makes mistakes. I mean, think about. I'm not asking you to re-examine your own life, but anybody watching this could re-examine their own lives and know, man, there was that time when I did such and such.
Yeah.
And man, if I got caught doing that, how bad it would be. How embarrassed I would be, how much it would have destroyed their lives or what they thought was their lives at the time. It's like me that day, okay? There are a lot of people who think, well, there I was, young assistant DA, I had the world by the... I didn't have anything except hope, okay, about doing something, okay? You never know where you're going to end up in life. You can't predict anything, all right? One of my very closest friends, lawyer, excellent lawyer, was completely prepared for life. Was moving into retirement, came down with a brain tumor, and it killed him. Nobody was more prepared to enjoy his retirement than this person. Insulated by great wealth, monetary wealth, insulated by great property, all right? And still, Lord, he's been dead now 7 years, maybe 8 years now. And you know what? And he was in better shape than me and you by far. He's been dead 8 years. He could still whip me if he wanted to in a straight up fight. But nothing can bring him back. We only have a short time here. So I think it's our duty to each other to help each other along as we run into these problems. You know what I'm saying?
You think it's almost society's duty to not convict these people?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that we have personally have a Christian obligation, okay? In my mind, I have a moral obligation. I have a human obligation to do the very best I can at what I do to help people in this situation. Now, society's made the rules. You know how it is. You were just like me. You were born, and all these rules were thrust upon you, okay? Some people are good at obeying the rules, and some people aren't. Some people at a very early age decide that they want to build houses, and other people have no idea what they want to do, okay? Other people, their futures are made out for them. Their father's a dentist, so they become a dentist, okay? Etc. You know how it is. We all got to get it together as quickly as possible. But for those who don't get it together as quickly as possible, and who do have trouble, it's my job to help them navigate them once they navigate their lives after they get into that. Now, does that mean I'm going to save these people? No, it doesn't. It really doesn't, okay? Because a lot of my clients do get in trouble again. A lot of my clients do, the wages of sin are what?
Death.
Death.
Yeah.
Some people, they die all at once. Others, they die one beer at a time, one cigarette at a time, one criminal escapade at a time. It destroys people from within. And soon you open up that obituary page and you see, oh, look at that. Dee Burris is dead. You know? Like next week, you're going to do something else.
Yeah.
You know, we're only here a short while. Won't be long. Somebody will open up that Cleveland Daily Banner obituary page if it's still here. And they'll look in there and they go, look at that. Scott Kanavos is dead. I remember the day that Conrad Fennell died like it was yesterday. He wasn't very old. He was only 63 years old. To me, though, he was this towering legend of a lawyer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He was this colossus of a human being, right? The fact that he could ever die was shocking to me, right? And now nobody knows who Conrad Fennell is except for a handful of people, okay, who knew him and loved him. You know, Kafka may have even said it. Lawyers live infamously and they die anonymously. That's another good quote for you.
Kafka.
Yeah.
We brought him up a lot.
I think so.
You know what I think would be helpful in our society? If they had a list of things you couldn't do and the consequences of them.
Yeah. Here's what I think.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff you say, oh, I didn't know that was wrong.
Well, here's what I think. When you're 10 years old, okay, they ought to sit you down with an accountant, with a lawyer, with a doctor, and they ought to, at a very early age, when you first reach understanding, a minister.
12 years old.
Right. And they ought to sit you down and they ought to say, look, Timmy, all right, this is where you are now. All right, you're in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, 6th grade, whatever. Okay, and Timmy, you're just here in the bottom, son. You're just there's the top of Adult Mountain. Okay, and what you need to do is figure out how you're going to get to Adult Mountain. And what we want you to do, Tim, is we want you to at least think about, okay, where you want to live. Okay, what kind of person you want to be. All right, what kind of job you think you want to have. Because most men and a lot of women too are really their jobs. What I hate to see is somebody who hates their work, okay, who really hates what they do. And they got to come in and they got to do that job every day that they hate because they have no other choices left for them. And they have nothing outside of themselves. You know, a person needs something outside of themselves to help give their life texture, meaning, right? A lot of people, it is God, it's religion, right? For some people, it's greed, it's money. For others, it's the love of a woman or a man. You know, but they got to have something that gives their life a sense of purpose.
Could be bowling.
Could be bowling, exactly, or watching bowling. It could be anything, but it's got to be something that makes them feel much, you know, that gives them something outside of themselves. I don't recommend gambling. That hasn't worked out for me.
But it could.
Yeah.
It could be that.
It could be that, exactly.
You know, your idea of setting somebody down at 10 or 12, that's not a crazy idea.
It's not as crazy as it seems. I mean, our school teachers try to do the best they can.
But nobody ever sat down and said, okay. You know, I mean, think how simple that would be.
Our parents tried, okay? I mean, I know your parents did. I'm
sure.
To the ability.
But nobody ever said, okay,
yeah,
we need to take this next 8 hours. Because it wouldn't take you.
Yeah.
6, 8 hours.
It'd be like going to sit at Disney and watching one of those seminars about a timeshare.
Yeah, this is what's going to happen when you're 50.
Filled with 6th graders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Judy, do you have any questions about your
career?
And
not give it to them like, this is probably what might happen, but say, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, they tell us everything else definite, but they don't tell us that.
I mean, honestly, if you can avoid accidents and mistakes, all right, think about it. If you can avoid accidents and mistakes, you can go pretty far in life. I mean, if you're on TW Flight 800 that exploded over the Atlantic and you're killed, that's beyond your control, right? If you can avoid mistakes, all right, being a young assistant DA and getting arrested, if you can avoid that mistake.
If they had a list,
Exactly. You know?
Say, oh, I won't do that one.
And invest your money as early as you can, kids.
Yeah.
You know?
Don't take on a lot of debt.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's too simple.
It seems like it would be.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's amazing. All these things that we're talking about came to me much later in life, okay? And I'm thankful for the lessons that I got from the different mentors that I've had over the years. The But with my children, what I've tried to do is give them two things: good teeth and quality education. If you ask my daughters what I think the two most important things you can give your children, it's a nice smile and a quality education, because they'll take you far in life if you'll simply avoid accidents and mistakes and focus on what your passion is.
Now, we've talked about things that made us where we are. But let's talk about the things that we wouldn't have gotten as successful had we have known. Does that make sense?
Yeah, see,
because there's those too.
Yeah, I hate to do that because, honestly, life's a process, not an event. Who knows? All I know is that tomorrow is Monday, and I'm glad to be getting up and putting on a suit and going to work. I'm just going to be glad to get up tomorrow and go to work. I'm glad for the little niche that I've carved out for myself and for my family. I want to see the Kanavos of Centenary Avenue to continue to flourish and grow. I want my children to have happiness in their life and to be successful. I want my wife to be happy and successful. I want my in-laws and everybody who I'm in contact with, my employees, to be happy and successful in what they do. Or I want them to at least go find out what will make them happy. You know what I'm saying? It's a quandary, but I'm just glad to have the opportunity to do it. I'm glad to at least, hopefully, because we never know, do we? We never know when we're going to be in that obituary page. When our time is up, I want people to say that I did the best I could while I was here, while I could. And it's not all about making money. It's about doing what you love to do and trying to do it the best that you can. Because, I miss things all the time as a lawyer. Not the level of malpractice, but I do miss things. You know what I'm saying? Little mistakes that lawyers make. But I learn from those mistakes as quickly as I can, and I try to make up for those mistakes the very next day. You know what I'm saying?
I'll say this. You have become an extremely successful lawyer.
I think all of that is fleeting. Because 5 negative posts on Facebook from now, okay? Anything could happen to destroy your world in today's environment.
The cream rises to the top.
That's what I always say too. In all things. I enjoy this very much.
It's great.
Yeah.